Today, Blackmagic have released a new firmware for their pocket cameras, version 7.3. Now this isn't a huge update by any stretch of the imagination. There are some really nice things in here, but they're all small touches really. So the reason I wanted to make this quick video on it though for you all is that this is the firmware where they have addressed that blue tint issue on the new 6K Pro, which has been affecting quite a few of our customers. Let's start though by quickly going through what else Blackmagic added in this firmware since we're here. Here's the complete list from their website. They've added an RGB histogram rather than just the Luma one that used to be there. It's nice, but it's still no waveform monitor. I'd much rather use a waveform than a histogram in pretty much every situation really. The color clipping indicators are a nice touch though. This is very similar to what Red does with their traffic light system. It's this small vertical row of squares next to the histogram, and when you overexpose, they're going to light up to let you know that you're clipping. Red, green or blue, depending on which color is actually clipping. They've also added a reference chart to their false color tool, which was very much needed. Why they didn't have this to start with, I don't know. False color is not a standardized system, so unless you've taken the time to actually learn Blackmagic system specifically, you just had no reference for what each colour actually meant, which meant that false colour was quite tricky to use. The new strip is nice, if a little small and hard to see, but it does make it clear, and at least that size does mean that it doesn't interfere with your image too much. But like I said before, this is very important to have, and it just wasn't there at all before, so it's great to see. They've also made some tweaks to the focus peaking to make it a bit more effective, and fixed a bug with importing lookup tables. Now one unexpected item on this list which did catch my eye is improved autofocus and active lens control, with no further details at all really. So we did test the autofocus quickly, and to be honest, we can't see any difference. The autofocus on these cameras is incredibly simple and really only good for setting focus in a stationary shot when you can't see the screen that well. I imagine this improved autofocus and active lens control bullet point simply means that they've added more compatible lenses or something like that. But unless Blackmagic give us a bit more detail, we'll never really know for sure. But if you saw that line on the firmware update and were hoping for significantly better autofocus, I'm afraid that's not the case. If you own either of the regular Pocket 4K or 6K cameras though, there is a very significant update in terms of colour, as it brings the new Generation 5 colour science to those cameras, so they will match the Ursa Mini Pros and the new 6K Pro better, and just give you slightly better image quality overall really. But if you own a 6K Pro already and were unfortunate enough to get a model with the blue tint issue like our showroom unit here, the bit in this firmware which you will definitely be the most pleased to see is the LCD calibration menu. You can see here just how far off our camera's LCD was compared to the SWIP monitor next to it. The firmware update itself didn't actually change the colour shift, but it adds this calibration part in the setup menus, which lets you very quickly and simply adjust these sliders to correct the white balance of the screen yourself. And this was really the only way that they could actually do it, as different screens had different levels of tint and some were just completely unaffected at all. So they couldn't just do a universal correction. And any true form of calibration would have needed a probe to actually measure the screen, which just makes everything much more complicated for people. This is a nice, simple and elegant solution, and I think it works well. I would have liked to have had some numbers for reference on the sliders so that you can spend a bit of time actually adjusting them until you're happy, and then actually write down the numbers so that if you have to reset the camera for whatever reason, you can just dial that correction quickly and easily back in again. Right now, you've got no way really of replicating these settings, so it's a very imprecise system. But the key thing to remember is that no camera's monitors are ever properly calibrated, like you can calibrate a true reference display. All of them normally have these small colour shifts here and there, and you shouldn't really be relying on an LCD screen on the camera to precisely judge your colours. This update isn't meant to magically make these into perfectly calibrated LCD displays. It's to give you a tool to roughly correct any color shifts which you may be seeing and impacting the way you're working, like the really quite extreme blue shift which our Pocket 6K Pro had out of the box. But it also could be useful to just correct the natural color shift which monitors have over time. I mean, after a year or so of use, you can often see that most LCD screens have shifted slightly one way or the other towards green or magenta. So a tool like this is often just useful to have anyway. So that's Blackmagic's new camera update 7.3 firmware for their Pocket Cinema cameras. And has this helped put your mind at rest about that blue tint issue? Let me know in the comment section down below. Thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.